It's BYU, it's Portland State, and it's a special game day edition of Locked On Cougars. Let's roll.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into a special edition of Locked On Cougars. I'm Jake Hatch, executive producer of the KSL Sports Zone in Salt Lake City, Utah, and a 14-year credentialed media member at BYU. I am your resident expert and insider, your host on this podcast. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Welcome in on a game day edition of the show. Looking forward to seeing BYU and Portland State on the field at LaVell Edwards Stadium. I will be headed down to LaVell Edwards Stadium shortly after we wrap up this live edition, but hope you all are doing fantastic on this Saturday afternoon. And quite honestly, I'm excited. We have waited 240 plus days, I think like 244 some odd days since we last saw BYU play against Colorado in that Alamo Bowl. I know it's Portland State. I know it's an FCS team. You're expecting this to be a blowout, but all the same, we got BYU playing football. So that in and of itself is obviously stuff to celebrate. And we're also going to talk, we'll get to this in a little bit about the Big 12. I've seen some complaints online. They've been sent to me as well, complaining about the Big 12 failing out of the chutes this season. Now, have there been some good performances? I'd be hard pressed to point out good performances, but at the same time, I would not overreact to that. But let's start off by talking about BYU and Portland State. I'm not going to try and bore you guys by breaking down position by position where I think BYU has an advantage, because across the board, BYU should have the advantage on this Portland State team. This PSU team member last week, Tarleton State, who, by the way, Tarleton did beat Army last night in double overtime. Bit of a surprise there. It was a crazy game. I was actually out watching high school football. Many of you probably saw, if you're in our insiders group, I noted that I was going out to watch Maple Mountain play Pineview and had an opportunity to see Brock Harris in person, but I was keeping track of scores on my phone, and I see Tarleton State in overtime with Army. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And they end up winning that game. So stunning victory for Tarleton. But I think the bigger note to be had here is that this is a BYU team that should, in theory, be able to name its score against Portland State. This is not a game that I'm going to go in trying to say, well, if BYU does this right or do this right, they should win this game. No, they should win the game, point blank, end of story, put a period on the end of it and call it a day. The bigger thing to pay attention to in this game is we're going to see BYU football history made. Bear Bachmeier, the first true freshman in BYU football history, makes his first career start under center for BYU, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he performs in this game. How long he's in this game, that remains a question. I would hope he plays at least 3 quarters. That's my personal opinion on the matter. We all know that Kalani Sitake is pretty conservative when it comes to these FCS versus FBS games in terms of not wanting to embarrass his opponents. But if he's going to break the mold, it feels like this is the game to do it. And what do I mean by break the mold? Is to leave your first string offense out there with Bear Bachmeier in there at quarterback as long as you feel like you possibly can. And I would say that's like 3 quarters of this game. You need to get Bear as many live reps as you can, both running and passing. I don't think this is going to be a game that BYU goes 70% run as much as I'm sure a guy like Kalani would like it to be, but you have to give a chance. And Aaron Roderick's offense is also predicated upon taking deep shots. It would not surprise me in the least to see BYU go deep on the first play of the game. A-Rod's done it before. He will do it again, and he very well could do that tonight to start off the season. Is it Chase Roberts? Is it JoJo Phillips? Is it Parker Kingston, who all of them are expected to play in this game so far as I'm aware. Now, we do not have the luxury of having the Big 12 player availability reports. Those will not come into effect until Big 12 play kicks off about a month from now when BYU goes to Colorado. Be nice to have that, though, to have an idea of, okay, who's probable, who's questionable. The players that are going to be missing today, though, the ones that I know they're going to be missing are Waylon Lapuaho. They said earlier this week, Aaron Roderick multiple times said that Waylon will not be playing in this game. He's dealing with a minor injury. They hope to have him back before a conference play begins. Then we also know that LaMason Waller and Jonathan Cabea both underwent surgery and are out at least a few weeks, it appears, if not maybe to mid-season. We'll see how they progress, obviously, because every player comes back from these injuries at a different rate. But the hope is that they're back at some point. Kalani Sitake has made it very clear that he will comment when it's a season-ending injury, and he's made no comment on any of those players. So you cannot, therefore, say that they're season-ending. Do they end up being season ending? That's TBD. A couple of you asking this, where can you watch the game online tonight? Well, it is streaming only. It is on ESPN Plus. Now, I have said it on this podcast to you guys that in this era of BYU sports, if you want to watch BYU sports en masse, I'm talking basketball, soccer, volleyball, across the board. If you want to watch BYU, you got to have an ESPN Plus subscription. Now, that obviously costs money, and you have to obviously fork over those dollars to ESPN to have access to it, but that's the only place to watch this game tonight. If you're looking to listen to it, it's on BYU Radio. It's also on 102 KSL News Radio 102.7 FM, which is a sister station of my parent station, the KSL Sports Zone that I work for in my day job. So you can catch it on the radio, but if you want to see the live broadcast of the game, you want to watch the game in action, if you're not going to be at LaVell Edwards Stadium, ESPN Plus is your best friend. ESPN Plus, it is streaming only. It is an interesting setup, but the nice part is if you go in there when you first sign up, if I'm not mistaken, I set this up forever ago. But when I went in the very first time, it said, who are your favorite teams? And I put BYU in there. So more often than not, it hasn't always worked this way. When I've tuned into ESPN Plus broadcast, usually BYU will pop up like the first team in my feed. So hopefully it'll let you do that. But ESPN Plus is where you can catch the game tonight. Or if you don't have access to that, you're not willing to pay for the broadcast, find it on radio. BYU Radio will have it for you guys. That's the fun part about this. Okay, Swing Savvy. Yacht, you look sexy AF today. Well, I'm about to head down to the game. I've got my game day attire, as it were, as I get ready to head down to cover this. I'm looking forward to it. It should be a really, really fun opportunity to watch BYU in general. This is not a game that, like I said, you're going to go into looking at it and saying, okay, well, what are the chances BYU struggles in this game? I know that 2017 kind of sticks in the craw of some Cougar fans because remember, when BYU opened the 2017 season, that Portland State squad made BYU work for it, and it ultimately proved to kind of be a canary in the coal mine of what was otherwise maybe the worst season in the last 50 years of BYU football, that 4-9 debacle that Kalani Sitake had. But looking forward to it. Bear Bachmeier, as I said, makes history as BYU's first ever true freshman to start the season opener. And then Mala, I'll just put this up here, and I'm going to throw this up. I think I should be able to throw it up here. Jake Retzlaff had a solid game leading Tulane over Power 4 Northwestern. You're not wrong about that. Jake Retzlaff looked very, very polished, I thought, for Tulane. It's crazy to think that not even, 3 months ago, about 3 months ago, we all were thinking, okay, what's Jake Retzlaff going to accomplish in his final season at BYU? Well, now he's down at Tulane, but a big win for them. I think it was 23-3 was the final, and Jake had both of the touchdowns in that game. He led a couple other drives that ended up in field goals. Preston Stone, by the way, is the starting quarterback for Northwestern, and many of you might recall that Preston Stone was the starting quarterback for SMU against BYU, and I think BYU may have broken him. He had like 3 or 4 interceptions in that game for Northwestern, and he hadn't played as a starter since BYU essentially forced him to get benched in that 18-15 win back in early September last year. And I was looking at that game. I'm like, man, what a crazy sort of circumstances. A quarterback that BYU may have broken going up against the guy that BYU started in that game. It's just kind of crazy how this universe of college football works. You have guys transferring all over the place all the time. Chris Akawa, Preston Stone was so poo-poo today. He was. I think it was 3 interceptions in like the first quarter and a half, and that allowed Tulane to get a sizable lead and sit on it. Now, I'm not saying the Northwestern are world beaters, and they're actually quite frankly far from that, but it is a big win for Tulane. And if you got that fever dream of BYU exceeding all expectations and making a run to the college football playoff, well, there is a possibility. Let's say BYU pulls that off. You could also see Tulane being the G5 representative in the college football playoff. How crazy would the universe be if it came around that BYU is playing against their former quarterback in that type of scenario? So crazy stuff. Big Flop with a good question here. Before I want to flip over and talk a little bit about the Big 12, he asked this: what do you think Bear stats are going to be? I'm very curious about this because I think it's going to be fairly pedestrian. What I mean by that, Big Floppa, is that I think that you're going to see a guy like Bear maybe pass for like 250 and run for, say, 50 to 80, if that makes sense, like maybe 300 plus total yards, because there's going to be some missed throws. There's going to be, it's the first game of the year. Any of you who watched just barely, I watched most of it, if not all of it, the Texas Ohio State game. 14-7 was the final. And both of the quarterbacks in that game, I know Arch Manning's taking a lot of heat in it, but Julian Sayin for Ohio State, he wasn't much better either. The quarterbacks, struggled in that game. It takes time out at the outset of a season for quarterbacks to really get comfortable. There's very few quarterbacks who go out and have just absolutely electric season openers, but the caliber of opponent BYU's playing in this game should lend itself to a guy like Bear being able to feel more comfortable because, simply put, as I already said, Portland State's pretty overmatched, it feels like, on paper in this game. So it's a big opportunity for the Cougars, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they perform overall. Oh, interesting question here real quick. Joseph Farnsworth saying this. Do you think Chase Roberts is faster this season? Now, here's the thing. Chase's game's never been predicated on speed, per se. It's more about his route running. That's what gets him open. He may have worked on his foot speed a little bit, but I'm telling you, the real guys to pay attention to if you want to see burners down the field, I think JoJo Phillips is being severely underrated in that aspect. I know he's tall and he kind of gets downgraded because he's so tall in terms of his speed, but he's got legit downfield speed. I think Parker Kingston's got the same thing. I also look forward to seeing guys like a Cody Hagan. Cody Hagan was an elite track runner here in the state of Utah, besides being an All-American type football player. So I think there's speed in the wide receiving core. It may not just be with Chase Roberts. But the other question I wanted to talk about before we wrap up this game day edition is I had it sent to me a couple of times about the Big 12 and their struggles out of the chutes this season. Now, obviously, you had two crazy games in week 0, but if you look at the weekend so far for the Big 12, it's not been great. But I don't think we need to overreact too much to it because, quite honestly, I don't think we're seeing the top tier of the Big 12 play quite yet. We'll get to that momentarily right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Now, if you're trying to get out to the game today, everybody, I've got an opportunity for you guys to get out to it. Now, LaVell Edwards Stadium is expected to be a sellout tonight, but it does not mean there are not tickets available, and that's where our friends over at Game Time comes in. It's the app that gives the advantage back to the fan. It is the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. It's my favorite thing about Game Time. I'm so sick of going to websites or ticket platforms where I pick my tickets, I get to the checkout screen, and suddenly it's like, hey, here's a gazillion fees being tacked on. Game Time, it shows you right up front what the price is going to be. And the best part is they also have opportunities for you guys to get incredible deals for games as low as $25 to select college football games out there. And the app is super simple, even lets you see the exact view from the seat you're selecting as well. And if you don't necessarily care where you sit, but you want to pick a certain part of the stadium to sit in, they have zone deals. You pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets and do it with Game Time, my friends. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and redeem the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's the promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, and go. It's all courtesy of your friends over at Game Time. So download Game Time today. Thank you once again for joining us on this special edition of Locked On Cougars. Now, looking forward to this kickoff tonight for BYU and Portland State at 6 o'clock. Expected to be BYU winning that game. But the bigger question that's kind of been thrown at me this weekend so far is, have you been paying attention, Jake, to how bad the Big 12 has been out of the chutes this season? Yeah, the scores haven't been great. Some of the performances have been less than stellar. But as I just said, week 1 is an interesting bag in terms of it's a mixed bag, I should say, in terms of the results. Now, right now, we have West Virginia in action. They're up 45-3 on Robert Moore. So Iowa State, the 22nd ranked team in the country, is up 27-7 on South Dakota. So those games are FCS versus FBS games. You got North Dakota, Kansas State coming up later tonight. Arkansas Pine Bluff against 23rd ranked Texas Tech. And then Northern Arizona taking on Arizona State also later tonight. And then we have Utah and UCLA in terms of an intersectional Big 10 versus Big 12 matchup. And then Hawaii at Arizona. So it's like I said, the games aren't necessarily stellar in terms of the name recognition. And quite frankly, I've got to give credit to Utah. They've got the best opponent here on today's schedule for the Big 12. Earlier this week, you had UCF scraping past Jacksonville State 17-10. Oklahoma State beating UT Martin 27-7. Houston did shut out Stephen F. Austin 27-0. Cincinnati had, Brennan Sorsby not thrown into double coverage. They very well may have beaten Nebraska, but 20-17 was the final there as Cincinnati fell to the Big Red Machine. And then Kansas beating Wagner 46-7. Baylor falling to Auburn 38-24, and then Georgia Tech getting past Colorado 27-20. Now, that Colorado game, I went back. I didn't see it live. I went back and rewatched like the final minutes of that game. The clock management from Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, was abysmal. Absolutely awesome. And I got to get to this comment here because it was one of the first ones that popped up. And Jacob Rosscastle threw this up. Hey, I'm joining from Austin, Texas, where no quarterback from Baylor to the Longhorns who knows how to throw a football. That's not a bad point. And the crazy thing is, remember, Sawyer Robertson was talked about as maybe the best quarterback in the Big 12 coming into the season. I will withhold judgment for at least another week or so, but it's not been all that great in terms of the quarterback play so far. But it is the first game of the year, and teams, we allowed the NFL to play multiple preseason games to get tuned up. And I know that the top end guys in the NFL aren't playing. It's more of an opportunity for the back end of the roster to kind of solidify itself and find opportunities to play in the NFL. But we expect these college football programs to come right out of the chute and be absolutely electric. That's kind of tough to put that on them. So I'm not going to necessarily jump down the Big 12 throat and say, y'all are blowing it. Like, you're absolutely screwing it up for us. They're not yet. But I do think that there can be some better performances, and I can see this right here. Pacing Cougar fan, UCLA, fight. Hey, you know what? Yeah, okay, I can understand that. I understand that it's your rival. Speaking of Utah taking on UCLA, but if you're simply looking at it from the Big 12 perspective in terms of getting the prestige for the conference, gotta have Utah win in the Rose Bowl tonight. And I do think Utah wins. I said that on my Big 12 Big Pick segment I did earlier this week for those of you who are everydayers. And then, by the way, if you haven't done it already, subscribe, rate, and review. If this is your first time checking out the show, we have daily BYU content here on Locked On Cougars for you guys. But the bigger point to be had is I'm not as concerned about the Big 12 right now. I will give it a couple of weeks, but eventually there are going to be those intersectional games. I'm talking next week, the week after that, where you're playing maybe an SEC team or a Big 10 team or an ACC team. And those go across the Big 12 in terms of the overall conference. You got to take advantage of the opportunity. BYU next week at Stanford. Stanford's supposed to be the dregs of the ACC. But guess what? You got to pound them. You got to establish that, no, there's going to be no chance of that. Reagan Wimpy, this is a good question here. I think BYU has a good chance at a shutout tonight. I would agree. I think BYU does have a good chance at a shutout. There is an opportunity there for the Cougars to really make an impression. And I'm interested to see how BYU performs in this game. Because as Russell Anderson says, Jake, BYU's loaded everywhere. Goodness. They do have a very strong roster. I know that we have seen BYU get downgraded a lot because of the Jake Retzloff situation, and it's understandable. If you look at it in the whole context of the national media, we're so quarterback-centric when it comes to football in this day and age that when you lose your quarterback who just led you to an 11-2 campaign, I get why people would be like, okay, yeah, we're going to downgrade BYU's chances. But I do think BYU's got a ton of talent. And maybe it doesn't come fully to bear tonight, because let's also acknowledge one other thing. Aaron Roderick and Jay Hill aren't going to show everything they've got. They're not going to show their full deck of cards, because nor should they. They should, in fact, hold back some of these opportunities, whether it's a special design blitz that Jay Hill came up with in the offseason, or some trick plays that Aaron Roderick's obviously got in his back pocket. We've seen that for years with him as the offensive coordinator. You don't need to show those in tonight's game. I joked earlier this week that if BYU wants to win this game, I'd run exactly 4 plays on offense. Those are inside zone, outside zone, mesh, and all goes. I think you could win with just 4 plays. Now you can change the variety of the lineups and the look in terms of the formations, but I really do think there's an opportunity. Yeah, we're going to do Jonathan's comment here in a moment, but the opportunity still exists for BYU to put on a good performance and show some things, but also hold things back as well. Ben saying this, I'm watching you while I'm at Costco in Bountiful, stocking up with food for the game tonight. Ben, hope you got something good. I was actually at Costco just yesterday. I'm not going to lie. I'm a big fan of just walking around Costco and finding yummy, tasty things I want to try. So I hope you found something good for yourself. Mala says this, UCLA had a horrid run defense last year. 4 of their front 7 got drafted. It'll be even worse this year. It's not a bad point. I do expect Utah to win, and that helps. And then Jonathan's comment here, Devin Dampier, less than Emerson Geilman. Now, Emerson Geilman spelled wrong there. He said, that's a joke, kind of. I respect it. It is. It's kind of fun to have fun with your rival, obviously, but it's going to be a fun game tonight. And just in terms of programming note for you guys, I have radio responsibilities that will keep me from doing a post-game show immediately after the game goes final, because I will be at LaVell Edwards Stadium, and I'll be wandering around pregame. If you're there, give me a shout-out. I got to give a shout-out to Tim. He actually was down at the Maple Mountain Pineview game last night and came over and said, what's up? I met Jake Brandon from Coug Connect for the first time ever in person. So I always appreciate meeting people in person when I get the opportunity. And I also should give a shout-out here to 3 other guys guys, Connor, Kyle, and Cade, who are all students at Maple Mountain High School. I believe they were all either football players or just students at Maple Mountain High School who were big fans of the podcast. So it's always an opportunity to go out and watch BYU and obviously to support the Cougars. And I appreciate them supporting the show while they support the Cougars as well. So I'm going to wrap it up here, but we will have a postcast coming for you guys as we have done for years here on the show, coming to you later tonight. The nice part is with the 6 o'clock kickoff that in theory should allow me to have it on air before we hit midnight, before Sunday really begins. But I look forward to seeing this. Oh, that's a good question here. Before, Mason, I will absolutely. If you're at the game and you see me, come and find me. I'm going to wander around the concourses of LaVell Edwards Stadium before the game tonight. I don't have a radio pregame show to do, so I've got like extra time on my hands. So I'm planning on getting down there and wandering around. So if you see me, shout me out. I'm wearing a black polo. It's got the Colina logo on it, but give me a shout out. I'd love to chat for a second and say what's up. And then also, Ben, before we go here, I'll answer this question for you guys. Reagan also come before the game to see if I see you if I can. But Ben says this: how much should we expect to see guys like Chase, Keanu, and other proven players tonight? As I said kind of at the outset, I really do think you want to push at least the first string offense for 3 quarters, at least in my opinion, to give a guy like Bear Bachmeier his full complement of guys around him and give as many plays as possible to him to get settled in there. So, yeah, you may see more of a Chase, Parker, and LJ Martin, a Sione Moa, and the like than you may have expected to. Defensively, though, Jay Hill already said it. He says as soon as he feels like the game is in hand, he is going to be throwing out guys in the second and third units out there. And I would expect that you'll see maybe a lighter workload defensively. Okay, Jeffrey, this is funny. I'll look for you, Jake. I'll be the one in blue. Oh, okay, which one of the thousands? But nonetheless, I respect the joke. All right, that's going to do it. As always, thank you for your guys' support. And I thought this was pretty fun. I think we do more of these. And by the way, the postcast will also be a live stream as well. The nice part is we also, as soon as we go wrap this up, it archives and it goes right onto YouTube. So if you have buddies that may not, or if you're listening to this later, it's put on demand as well. So there's an opportunity for you to still catch the show and get the content that you crave, even if you can't catch it live. But as always, thank you for all y'all support. Cannot thank you guys enough for being with us literally every single day. There's thousands of you out there who are everydayers, and enjoy the game tonight. Cougars versus Portland State. And oh, by the way, I said it yesterday on the podcast. I kind of see it like a 55-3, 49-3. That's the kind of score I expect tonight. And that may be Kalani Sitake trying to hold things down, but I think this is Portland State. They're overmatched, and BYU should run roughshod. But as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars a part of your day. Thank you for being a part of this special edition. And we'll see you out at LaVell Edwards Stadium soon, right here. And join us again by the postcast. We got to wrap it up here on Locked On Cougars. See ya.